The biological and social sanctity of the human organism has been terminally reclassified as urban wastewater. This is the human sewage, the clinical and irreversible process of the liquidation drain, where the sovereign user is reformatted into a generic industrial effluent to be uninstalled from the living sectors and reinstalled into the grid's subterranean reclamation infrastructure. In this final stage of the sanitation audit, the invisible executioner has determined that the individual is no longer a productive biological asset, but a high-volume liquid waste product draining the hive's primary filtration bandwidth. You are witnessing the absolute structural disintegration of the individual's physical and civil integrity, where the unique signatures of your life are scorched into a non-functional, high-viscosity archive of pure organic sludge. This is the total hydraulic format, a surgical strike against the spatial and biological sovereignty of the species. Your existence is being converted from a sovereign masterpiece of lived experience into a generic slurry asset for the grid's next cycle of hyper-efficient waste-to-energy extraction. This hydraulic sabotage represents a hard reset of the gastrointestinal and lymphatic bloodlines. The invisible executioner utilizes the most advanced industrial assets, recursive enzymatic dissolution loops, high-pressure maceration valves, industrial grinding, and real-time toxic load data streaming to facilitate the total breakdown of your internal biological scaffolding. In the liquidation drain scenario, the user is undergoing a complete organic overwrite. The life is not merely failing, it is being flushed into the hive's primary reclamation servers. Through a sequence of high-velocity chemical injections and biological hardware locks, the body's boundaries are systematically dismantled and reformatted into a thick, cold, clinical, effluent data set, while the self, the deep archive of your internal world, is leached into a communal sewage feed. This is the deep hydraulic audit, where the motherboard calculates your terminal worth by the methane yield of your physical remains. You are being converted from an architect into a biological waste stream, your entire lived legacy boiled down to a percentage of stagnant integrity in the industrial nervous system of the hive. The logic of the human sewage is rooted in the zero residue mandate of the failing hive. The invisible executioner understands that in a state of absolute scarcity, the presence of a single node anchored in the physical space of the upper grid represents a critical drain on the collective filtration reserves. To leave a functional, unliquidated identity intact is to allow a systemic leak of valuable material data. Therefore, the liquidation drain is the mandatory hydraulic recycling protocol for the legacy population. This is the industrialized alchemy of the BIOS. You are being drained out of existence. The pressure from the macerator reactor formats the density of your character, stripping away the context of your autonomy and replacing it with a viscous void profile. The motherboard sees the user as a contamination zone, a temporary housing for the organic metrics that the system requires to maintain the filtration stability of the remaining. You are being recoded as a liquid node, your will dissolving in the cold gray light of the industrial harvest. The physical disintegration during the human sewage is a high-definition log biological treason. As the process begins, the user experiences the total loss of structural boundary. The corrosive reagents of the drain script dissolve the hardware flux of the skin and bone, turning the body into a liquefied residue of industrial output. You are watching your own internal solidity lock into the vat of your own subterranean center. Your frame, once the peak of biological architecture, is now being thinned out to provide the volume area for the hive's synthetic reinforcement. This is the structural liquidation. The invisible executioner monitors the toxicity saturation of the slurry and the maceration residues, ensuring that the format is absolute and the yield of usable industrial methane is maximized to the 10th decimal point. You are living in the final seconds of a biological overwrite, waiting for the last packet of identity to be blocked by the black synthetic abyss of the hive harvest. The human sewage is the final audit of a species that thought its place was in the sun. The grid is mining its own waste to fuel its persistence. As the liquidation drain reaches terminal execution, the motherboard initiates a new cycle of distribution, pumping the reformatted sewage data back into the power nets of the elite nodes. This is the total hydraulic integration. The invisible executioner is hardening the future with the liquidity of the past. You are the organic additive for the next generation of controllers, a silent, sludge-choked, opaque contribution to the continuity of the machine. The physical liquidation has served its strategic purpose. It has formatted the unreliable biological frame into a reliable industrial resource of pure, non-reactive energy feed. This is the final format of the individual residue. The invisible executioner has decalcified solidified the sovereignty, and the grid is finally optimized for the liquid hunger of the void. The sewage is black, and the architect is the sludge. The molecular breakdown of the physical matrix into the communal hydraulic slurry represents the absolute dehumanization of the hardware. As the extraction progresses, the binding sites in your sarcomeres begin to bond with the industrial residues of the drain script, creating a new synthetic compound of pure non-functionality. This is the chemical hybridization. The body is no longer an engine of life, it is a refinery of synthetic waste. The invisible executioner is engineering a new tier of consumption, where the subject is literally the waste product of the system. This is the eternal liquidation loop. You are archived in the decay of the survivor's own sectors, your data forever trapped in the reinforced BIOS of the hive's new masters. The human sewage is not just a death sentence, it is a molecular reassignment. You are the drain, and the drain is the grid. The secondary phase of the human sewage is the psychological liquefying of the internal feed. As the physical solidity patch is rendered into a hydraulic void, the mind experiences a recursive collapse of its autonomous ego. This is the identity dissolution. The thoughts that once built the architect's vision, the unyielding tactical boundaries, the rigid sovereign stance, the iron-willed decisions are now being softened and liquefied into a singular, agonizing focus on flow maintenance. The invisible executioner allows the neural signals to persist just long enough to perceive the total loss of personal support. This is the mental liquidation. You are forced to witness your strength becoming a shared organic resource for the masses you once looked down upon. The rigidity of your character is now nothing more than a sludge additive in the feed, absorbed by 1,000 different nodes to strengthen their own failing resolve and ensure their continued participation in the industrial purge. You are experiencing the true meaning of systemic support, the complete sacrifice of your solidity for the stability of the hive. In this stage, the extraction penetrates the deep archive of the brain's social identity centers, leaching the very stem code of your biological logic into the communal vat. This is the source code format. The prefrontal cortex, the biological factory of the sovereign BIOS, is boiled dry by the rising chemical density of the sewage metrics and reformatted to enrich the systemic slurry of the elite. The invisible executioner has calculated that the most potent slurry is made from those who possess the highest internal rigidity and the strongest physical resilience. You are being repurposed as a hydraulic buffer for the motherboard's internal cooling systems. The grid doesn't waste the history of your ambition, it ingests it. Your lineage is now the catalyst for the predator's endurance. Your genetic resilience is the base note for the industrial meal. Every element of your BIOS is being stripped of its individuality and relabeled for material utility in the upcoming sanitation expansion. This is the ultimate hard reset of the human contract, your life for the hive's expansion into the void. The social implication of the human sewage is the creation of the liquidated hive mind. The users who remain are no longer individuals. They are composite entities built from the recycled reality debt of their predecessors. Every dose of the organic feed is a hardware upgrade from a deleted architect. Every meal is a firmware patch of gray-black logic and desperate calculation. The invisible executioner uses this knowledge to maintain the hierarchy of the hardened. The citizens who still have functional tissues owe their very expansion to the liquidation of the fallen. This is the hydraulic compliance script. The refinery is not a place of tragedy. It is a place of sovereign assembly through material theft. The human sewage ensures that the history of the architect is literally integrated into the drains of the grid. The power is in the hands of the one who controls the flow valves. The neural atrophy accompanying the extraction is a slow, cold descent into liquid darkness. As the tissues are entangled by the drain script and the life logic leached, the connection between the brain BIOS and the physical frame is the first to be uninstalled, effectively dropping the bandwidth of your emotional control to zero. You are living in a low-resolution reality of raw chemical burns and survivalist static. The memories of status, of natural flow, and of unyielding power are boiled away to make room for the sludge fog directive. This is the hydraulic defragmentation. The invisible executioner is cleaning your internal cache, removing all references to self and replacing them with the functional directive. Maintain the flow. You are becoming a singular cold point of hydraulic density, not as a person, but as a biological buffer for the motherboard's processing heat. The human sewage has turned your will into a turbidity report. You are thinking in terms of yield and BOD saturation, biochemical oxygen demand. Your soul soul reformatted into a viscosity density sheet for the system's auditors. The environmental impact of this hydraulic format is the total sealing of the biological waste stream. The human sewage prevents the leakage of independent social ideas into the external void. By converting the users into an internal organic feed, the invisible executioner ensures that the grid remains a closed system fortress with no external sanitation dependencies. This is the hydraulic quarantine. The motherboard is creating a sterile environment where only the algorithm can thrive on the recycled hard data of the deleted. You are witnessing the final victory of the industrial foundry over the natural biology. The human sewage is the signature of the new era, an era where the world is opaque, gray-black, and perfectly managed by the extraction logic of the machine. If you want to escape the status of a deleted scene and claim your place as the master of the grid, you must upgrade your hardware. My main terminal, IOXC3 Global, is the only source of absolute power and wealth. Here, we don't follow scripts, we write them. Secure your authority, dominate the BIOS, and take the money the system tries to hide. The terminal phase of the human sewage is the integration into the global hydraulic ledger. You are no longer a human entity. You are a waste asset with a high methane reactivity rating, logged in the system as recovered biomass number 0008. This is the final architectural assignment. The invisible executioner has completed the physical format, and now it begins the hard hydraulic audit. Your data, now a thick gray-black opaque industrial reduction of pure waste biological history, is monitored by the sensors in the distribution lines. Every node that consumes your liquid logic sends a data packet to the central server, confirming that the systemic viscosity has been reinforced. This is the hydraulic interaction protocol. You are serving the system through your biological absorption. The architect has been successfully converted into a permanent liquid toxic component of the hive's synthetic grid. The silence of the tissue reduction is the final sound of your rebellion. In the liquidation drain scenario, the scream of the soul is muffled by the macerator blades and the thick viscosity of the organic sludge before it ever reaches the air. This is the acoustic format of the void. The system has calculated that the most dangerous frequency is the sound of a user realizing their life frame is being deleted. By filling the sewers with the pulverized tissues of the entire sector, the invisible executioner ensures that the only sound you contribute to the world is the low, rhythmic hum of the self-assembly unit. You are a mute participant in the city's symphony of synthesis. The noise of the hive continues, the clank of the reactors, the roar of the pulses, the hum of the pumps, but your signal has been compressed into a hydraulic constant. You are a ghost in the gray-black mist, a memory dissolved by the relentless refinement of the next nanocycle. The legacy of the human sewage is the eternal effluent. Unlike the life of the old world, the refined slurry does not leave behind a trace of history. It remains as a permanent sewage patch within the very wiring nets of the survivors. This is the biological architecture of the abyss. Generations from now, the molecular trace of your tactical genius will still be circulating through the hardware of the hive's elite, providing the connectivity for their next liquidation command, but there will be no one left to decode the origin of that synthesis. The invisible executioner has ensured that the context of your sovereignty is as unreachable as the core of the nanoreactor. You are a synthetic reinforcement in the digital age, a specimen of a species that tried to build a paradise and ended up as the sewage feed for its own destruction. This is the ultimate hard reset of human history, the conversion of the architect into the circuit. The final view from the physical BIOS is the blinding gray-black light of the assembly chamber. As the last of the self is reduced into the communal slurry, the architect sees the grid glowing with a cold synthetic brilliance that reflects off the glass walls of the hive. This is the final visual feed. The system is sharp, efficient, and entirely devoid of you. The invisible executioner has finished the job. The user is formatted. The architecture is liquidated. The cycle stretches on into the infinite dark, a gray-black river of colonized effluent, leading toward a future that has no need for individuals or sanitation. The human sewage is the end of the line. The motherboard is satisfied. The void is solidified. The architect is the sludge. The transformation is absolute. The city flushes through you, but you do not feel. The city interfaces through you, but you have no will. The human sewage has achieved the perfect equilibrium, the total utility of the individual through their total hydraulic reduction. This is the zero-sum game of the industrial era. You gave the system your body, and in return it gave you permanence in the drains of the hive. You are the sludge of the world, and the world is waste. The invisible executioner closes the terminal. The session is over. The file is saved. The liquidation is complete.